Hello, hello, everyone. You are listening to The Success Palette, a place to discuss everything that you were not taught in school about how to be successful in the arts. I'm your host, Soda, and today we are going to talk about a subject that has been requested by a few of my listeners, and that is the subject of grief. I know that some of you are struggling to continue on with your craft, with your career, with your life, because the pain is so deep due to the loss of a loved one. And while I personally haven't had to deal with this, fortunately, I really wanted to make sure that this did get addressed. And I think back to during the pandemic, I had just had my little baby girl, Ember, and I was paranoid of something happening to her. I would have these horrible dreams and intrusive thoughts of her falling. And I would think about how I wouldn't have any will to live anymore, even just imagining something happening to her. And this was causing me a lot of stress until I heard Nicole's story, who is my guest today. Now, Nicole, in your first book, the 10-minute refresh for moms, you talk about how you had a lot of nightmares and stress about something happening to your little one, Emberly. Can you talk a little bit about that situation and what ended up happening with her?
Yes. So I wrote the 10-minute refresh for moms and published in 2019. I wrote it while I was pregnant with Emberly. And before she was even conceived, we have 5 children before her. She's our sixth. And I had this recurring nightmare that one of my children was going to drown on my property. And it was just constant, this dream that I would wake up from with night sweats, tears pouring down my eyes. I couldn't go back to sleep. It was so awful. Like I hated this dream. And it happened multiple times. And so I got to this point in my personal development journey where I knew that this dream was probably telling me a message that maybe I could work through some fears. So I did this whole thing in my book where I wrote about fear setting, where I went through the whole thing. Like, what can I do to prevent this? What can I control? What can I not control? How can I prepare for this if ever it did happen, even if I did everything that I could control? And I just went through all of this process when Emberly was like in my womb, right? Because at that point we had a pool and a pond, and I just was terrified. And I unfortunately, while I did that, I got to a place of peace. I got to a place of like, yeah, I could handle that. As much as you can prepare for any sort of thing. And I got to the point where I didn't think it would ever happen. Like, that was just my fear. It was teaching me a lesson. I'm okay. And then it happened. And then she was, 20 months old and drowned in our backyard pool. I wasn't home, and I was dropping a couple of our other daughters off at a birthday party, and my husband was here with our 2 older kids and, well, 3 of our kids and Emberly. And next thing I know, I'm coming home, dropping the kids off, and I see an ambulance coming down the driveway. So this was like my worst nightmare coming true. And up until that point, I had done everything that I could to prepare mentally, emotionally, physically, anything in my power to prepare for that moment. And I remember driving up the driveway and seeing the ambulance come toward me, and I knew immediately, oh my goodness, it actually happened. Like, my worst nightmare came true. Like, what? It was like that paralyzing fear, but also that personal peace. Like, I just had this deep peace rush over me and say, I've been preparing for this moment, and now I have to choose. I remember deciding on the driveway when I was still, like, our driveway like a third of a mile long. So it was quite a little drive, with my heart racing. I knew instantly when I saw the ambulance that Emberly had drowned. I just knew it in my heart. And I also knew that I could make a choice there. I could do what my dream had told me and blame my husband, blame the pool, get angry, ruin our marriage, get a divorce, and basically have my whole life unfold before me and get ruined and shattered. Or I could choose in that moment to just roll with it, give it the necessary love and attention and acceptance that any kind of situation needs to help us heal, and just see what happened. So I chose in that moment to love whatever was going to happen, to love my daughter with all my heart, to love my husband and my other children. Whatever happened, I wasn't going to place blame on anyone. And that's easier said than done. you know, I made that choice in that moment, but several months down the road, I'm still like reeling with guilt, reeling with this internal turmoil of like, it's just so much easier to blame somebody else for the pain that we're feeling. But then something magical happened, and Emberly and I had so many conversations together after she passed that all those fears and the guilt and the shame and the feeling of I wish I could have done better have been healed. And there's still occasionally times when I feel that, but honestly, it's been such a miraculous and beautiful experience, even though it's my worst nightmare, that I can't say that I'm upset anymore. I feel deep peace and gratitude for all that she has taught me and everything that I've become as a result of it. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't wish for it have never to have happened, because obviously it's not something I'd wish on anyone. And yet I can honestly say today that I'm grateful. I'm in a state of gratitude and deep peace. And I know that she's here with me all the time, and it feels like a blessing in disguise.
I love your story so much. And while it is heartbreaking, it's also amazing to know that, our loved ones, at least I believe, are around us, even if we can't channel them the way that you've been able to. Like, they're still around us, supporting us. And I know you go into more detail about everything that happens in some other podcasts. I'm going to link the one below that helped us get connected, because you just explained it so well there. I'm not going to have you repeat it again, but I know that you also mentioned that you gave birth to Emberly around the same time that you launched your first book.
Yeah.
And I think it was you who mentioned publishing that book was kind of the same feel as giving birth.
Yes. No, I had two babies. Yeah.
I know, not literally, but, some similar concepts. What are some ways that the creative expression of writing helped you, one, prepare you for what eventually happened, and two, helped you heal and, move on, and how important is creativity when it comes to recovery from grief?
Oh man, it's funny because I never viewed myself as an author or a writer. I actually hated writing. It wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. I remember going to college and having to take English, and they'd send back the paper that you wrote, just put your heart and soul into, and it'd be all red marks. And I was like, I'm never going to be a writer. And then when my dad actually passed in 2017, which kind of started my whole personal development journey. It seems like grief has a way of opening us up in a way that other things don't always do. Like, it wakes us up. And for me, it was my dad that was the catalyst originally to start to just realize that we don't always have tomorrow, and that I need to make the most of what I have right now. Like, any of us could go at any minute, because his passing was just like that. And so was Emberly's. And I've had this experience so many times that I know that we need to really enjoy each and every moment and every day, right? So I started my writing process actually when my dad died, and I started healing myself through reading and learning and trying to just really go deep into my inner self, into my own feelings and thoughts about things. And then when I was pregnant with her, that's when I started writing the first book. I was like, I just know so much that I need to help all these moms out there. I need to help them find joy and happiness, because I'm so happy. I was just thrilled with life. And for the first time in forever, because I'd been a stay-at-home mom for so many years, and sacrificing myself every moment of every day for my 5 children, and then pregnant with the 6th while I was writing this. And I had so much hope and joy that I was like, I'm finally going to be able to do it right according to my ego, like I'll be able to like show up filled up rather than so stressed out and so tired and overwhelmed and exhausted because I'm burnt out because I don't know how to refill my cup. And so that was the impetus for my first book, was just like teaching moms how to really refill their cup while they're still in the throes of motherhood, while they're still, raising children, not waiting until someday. Because that's what I always kind of was doing, was waiting until, oh, well, I'll wait till they all graduate, when they're out of the house, when I'm bored in retirement, then I can figure out what I like to do. But this was like, no, I need to do it now. And so being able to express myself, to share parts of my soul and the learnings that I've had and the experiences that I had, was my first book. Like, it was so helpful to just be able to share, to be able to shine while still a mom with lots of young kids and a lot going on, to be able to show people that you can, and you actually should, put yourself first and fill your own cup so that you can pour into others without feeling burnt out, without feeling overwhelmed and tired and angry, which is my case. I was so angry all the time. And it just brought my soul so much purpose and so much joy that I had to share, right? And so that was my first book. And then as Emberly passed, I learned that I could channel her. And my second book, I had never intended to write another book, but while I was raising her, I kept having this feeling that my whole next book would be about Emberly, and how little kids literally teach us the joy of life and of just being in the present moment. They don't worry about the past. They don't worry about the future. They're not worried about pretty much anything except for what's going on in this moment. And she was such a teacher to me. I was finally open to learning from my kids rather than just being the teacher as the mom. And so I allowed myself to just really observe her and be with her every moment. And because of those constant fears, which I now know during her life, I had so many premonitions, and the dream itself was a premonition, right? I'm not going to have a lot of time with her. I get these thoughts like, put your computer down and enjoy her right now, because you never know when she's going to leave. And or take pictures with all of the siblings. They're going to want them. Like, so many thoughts during her whole life. So I knew somehow that I would be writing a book about her, but I really just didn't believe that she would die. Like, I just thought it was intrusive thoughts, fear, whatever. And so when she did pass and I learned that I could channel her, it was such a healing journey. Like, being able, and I didn't even think I was writing a book. I was just having conversations with her. I was writing what was pouring out of my soul as a grieving mother. And I would suggest for anyone going through grief to write without any intention of sharing with anyone. Write from your heart and soul and just let it rip, let it all pour out of you without feeling like you have to micromanage it or fix it or make it perfect at that moment. And that's like my probably best advice for anything in life, is just live in this moment unapologetically and 100% you. And so I did that with Emberly, and the things that poured out of me and through me from her were so healing. And now they've helped heal so many hearts around the world, that it's just been such a beautiful blessing, that my worst nightmare has become such a gift to so many people. And the creative process has been so healing along that journey.
Yeah, and I know that in your second book, it's basically you having these channeled conversations with Emberly's spirit, and she teaches you a lot about the world, and, it helped you kind of leave certain beliefs behind. Can you talk a little bit about how these conversations with her changed you and helped you kind of deconstruct certain beliefs that were not doing you any good, that were kind of holding you back from truly recovering?
Oh man, that's a loaded question because there's so much. Let's just say I grew up and was raised a Mormon or a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a very high demand religion. I loved it and lived it with all my heart. I believed it with every fiber of my being, I used to say, until about 37, and then I started questioning it. And then when about a year before Emberly was born, I had a severe throat problem to the point where my throat chakra had closed off, and I knew I needed help. I had to get surgery. And to make a long story short, I ended up leaving the church because I realized that I wasn't speaking my truth, that it was no longer serving me. It was no longer something that lit me up. It was actually something that was holding me back and making me feel caged. I think a lot of us are stuck in a comfort zone and we think it's comfortable because we're used to it. It's normal, it's natural. Like so many of us are living in states of perpetual stress or fear or whatever it might be, that we're just so used to it that we don't think or believe that we can change that, or we don't even think it'll be good for us. Like we're afraid of changing. But I had to for my health, and when I did, for that whole year, I doubted it. Like I was so afraid, just lived in constant fear of like, well, what if I'm ruining my entire family for eternity? And so many of the beliefs that I held dear were like, families are forever. And now mine won't be. Like I'm sending myself and all my children to hell, basically. The Mormon version of hell is like basically not being able to live with God forever. And that was terrifying. And then when Emberly passed and I was able to start asking her every question about all of that. And not only did I just deconstruct Christianity with her, but I also talked about, parenting and politics and just life in general and life after life. And she just really held my hand and basically explained to me that there's no wrong way. You can stay in the church if that makes you happy, but it's clearly not anymore. You see things from a totally different perspective, and that's okay too. You see it from a more open perspective and unconditional perspective, which is where she is now. She explains that where she is called all that is. And that's why part of the title is Remember All That Is. But all that is to us is God. We are God. We are source. And we are all created under this equally, basically. But we choose what happens to us in this life and the challenges and things that we have. So as she was answering these questions, my heart was like, I'm terrified that these are the answers because they're so different than the things I was told were the only right way my whole life. And this is so scary. And yet she held my hand through the whole process. And there were several times I had to stop writing for a day or two and just, let it soak in. And then I'm here 3.5 years out from when she died. And I'm still like trying to embody a lot of the messages that she gave me and a lot of the transformation. Because you can know something, but still not do it or not embody it, right? It's so easy to like, yeah, that's great. I understand that. And I can't do it. It's like, I know that I'm supposed to eat right and exercise, but sometimes I just don't want to. And her way of explaining life and, why we're here and what we're doing and all of that kind of stuff, and also leaving religion was terrifying to me, but also it brought such deep inner peace and like just a resolve of like, I can't do it wrong. I'm not going to hell. I'm going to be with her forever, no matter what I do. And my children are safe in that way as well. And it was such a relief to my soul, such a relief to my human ego, I should say. My soul was fine. But reconnecting with that part of that inner knowing that all that isness, I guess, that each of us has was a huge relief to me and to so many people who read the book. I hope that answers the question.
That's exactly where I was hoping that you would go with this, because my next question was about how, you leaving your religion. I mean, for me, I also left Mormonism recently, and while, it's not anything close to the same as grieving a loved one, it still can have this void in your life. And I know for me, it's been a really difficult journey to find a way to fill that void. And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on how you were able to fill your void, both with, leaving this amazing community that you had, your whole belief system, and, with your child, how you are able to fill yourself up without doing it in a toxic way.
Yes, that's a great question, because so many of us are resistant to feeling our feelings. We just want to numb from them. We want to hide from them. We want to escape. And we feel like the void is only going to be filled by something out there, someone out there. But what I learned is that, and you can see this by any kind of research, seeing anyone who succeeds and finally gets to their goal, it's like that carrot on the stick, right? It's always going to be something else. You always need more. And I hate the phrase that, we get so much in just movies about love, like, you complete me. And that's not true. No other human being can complete us. No one else can love us enough until we love ourselves first. And that's the main message, I think, from Emberly and from our book in general, is to remember who you are. Because, like I just said, all that is for us represents God, and God is all that is. Every single human, every single thing of life, every single thing you see anywhere, in any time, space, anywhere. And when you realize that we're part of all of that, and you overcome this need as a human being to fill a void, you recognize that you are everything and there is nothing missing. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing that needs to be fixed. There's nothing you need to heal from. And healing is really just a matter of perspective. And she gave me an acronym after we wrote the book that I love to share for heal. To heal, it's a human emotion accepted with love, or a human experience accepted with love. To love everything that happens, even though it's horrible, even though it hurts and we don't want to feel it. If we allow ourselves to really just tap into that moment, be present, and just, Emberly says, ask, how is this helping me? Or what is this doing? How is this serving me in any way to become more aware of who I really am? And when you can look at life and everything that comes through you or to you in your life, you can say, this is here to help me heal a perspective of my limited self, to help me see things from a view that I am already whole, I am already perfect, I am already complete, I am already healed. When I really tap into that all that isness, when I remember all that is, when I remember my true identity, and then nothing can harm you, nothing can hurt you. You don't have to be afraid of anything ever else again, because the void within is filled by loving who you are, by allowing who you are, by having so much unconditional love and acceptance for who you came here to be, and for your diversity, for the difference that you bring. Because every single one of us, it's so amazing that there's like 8 billion people, and every single one of us has a unique fingerprint, a unique thing that we bring to this life. And when we tap into that, when we allow ourselves to be us rather than comparing ourselves to somebody else, feeling like we're not good enough, like they have something that we don't have, like they somehow know better or do better or look better or have more, when we can stop that and say, I am okay just the way I am. And when I can shine by just being me and not having to change that or fix it or do anything differently, then the suffering disappears. The feeling of not enoughness disappears, because we realize that no matter where I go, I have me. I have my own back, and I fulfill that void. I am the void. When we become the void and love the void and accept it and realize that we are it, it disappears and we feel full and whole and satisfied and complete and perfect. Yeah.
I love that so much. And have you seen Frozen 2?
Yes. Oh my goodness.
It reminds me of at the end where Elsa realizes that she was the one that she was looking for. I love this concept that we could be our own hero, that we can save us from, this dark feeling. And then speaking of shining, on your book cover, you have Emberly running into this cosmic void, and she is just glowing and shining, and you see this beautiful blue butterfly. I'd love to hear more about how you decided to go with this gorgeous cover that, I mean, I see it and I get the feels. So I had to get the hard copy of this. And what made you decide to go this route? I know you touched a little on the name, which I know you might have some more information on, but I'd love to hear about the colors, the butterfly. What does the butterfly represent? And yeah.
Oh my goodness, I love this question. Thanks for asking. Nobody's ever asked me that. There's such a good story behind this that I'm actually getting teary-eyed remembering it because I hadn't thought about this process for a while. But I've told this story in other podcasts of the title, and I'll tell that really quick, but the cover is just as special. So when I was grieving, like deep in the throes of grief, several months after she had passed, I started art. I started creating painting and doing resin art and playing with crystals. And one day I was out in my studio just playing, doing my thing, because that really helped me connect to her and really helped me feel her. And it was a way of creating pearls from my pain. And I was sitting there listening to some YouTuber, and he talked about going into a darkness retreat. His name was Kyle Cease. He's become one of my favorite speakers. But I was like, what's a darkness retreat? But my soul was like, oh, listen, pay attention to this because you want to do that. And I knew instantly that that was my next step, was going to a darkness retreat. At this point, I think we had already written pretty much the whole book. We just had no idea what to name it. And I was too scared to share it. I was like, not ready. Like, I don't think I want the world to see my grief. I don't think I want them to call me loony or crazy or woo-woo because I'm channeling a book with my daughter and all that. I wasn't ready. So this was about 6 months later. I signed up. They had a waiting list and I was able to go. And the only place I could find them in the entire country happened to be an hour away from where I grew up in my childhood home. Like, what are the odds of that? Like, it was in Ashland, Oregon. And so I went there, stayed there for 10 days in this dark man-made cave by myself. There was no light, no sound, no other human. And it was just me, myself, and all the thoughts, all the feelings and all the fears, and everything came up. And I went there specifically to kind of get proof that my book was real, that it wasn't like this made up thing. Because a lot of people will tell you you're just making this up. You're doing this to try to feel better. And so I was doubting it. I had fears that it was just made up, even though I knew deep down I couldn't even have written that for the life of me without her help or divine help. And during that time, I would think it'd been about day 5, I finally got a beautiful divine download, is what I call it, from her, where I had talked before I went to the darkness retreat. I had talked to my editor about what we could name the book. We had no idea what to name it. She had mentioned, why don't we call it Returning to All That Is, or Return to All That Is? Because that's what Emberly did. And that's what you did in the process. You talked about my transformation. If you read the beginning of the book all the way to the end, you see how much I changed just in that process of writing. And so I was like, okay, that's a pretty good working title. I really do want to use All That Is because that's such a main message. And then when I'm in the dark room, I had this download of, Mom, returning to all that is pretty good, but it's not exactly how it works. You can't return to all that is because you are now, you always have been, and you always will be an integral and necessary part of the wholeness of all that is. So name the book Remember All That Is, and then highlight the ember. And it was just like this beautiful moment, like, her name is Emberly. We named her that because we knew that an ember, for some reason, we knew that an ember was like a piece of a fire that had been separated and could be brought back to life with a simple burst of air, with some tension, some love, and it could create its own fire. And that's literally the imagery that she gave me of when we remember who we are, when we remember all that is, we come back to life. We're here on this earth feeling separate, feeling the illusion of separateness, like we're not one. And then when we remember that, we come back to life. That fullness ignites within us, and we come back to a roaring fire rather than just this little tiny flame that could be brought back to life. So that was a beautiful experience in a dark room. Fast forward several months from there, I had finally started the process of like getting the book published, finding an editor. Well, I already had the editor, I should say, finding a cover. So I go to this place. What's it called? It's been a while. I think it's called 99 Designs. And you put on there basically like the things that you want as an idea for a cover. I knew I wanted ember highlighted. And at that point, I wanted it to look like fire because fire is what the message she was giving me. So I was telling the designers, like, basically you put it out there and a whole bunch of designers give you feedback or give you like their ideas of designs. They show you designs that they could go with, and you have to choose one within a certain amount of time and go with one. And then they can tweak it or whatever. So I got all these different designs back from the original prompt that I had given them, and they all looked like hell, like fire, like literally like flames of fire and hell. And I was just like, this is not the vibe I was going for at all. And I was like kind of terrified. And I remembered I was actually painting again. This always happens when I'm like in my flow. That's the beautiful of being creative, the beautiful part of just being able to receive divine information when you're just letting go and going with the flow. Anyway, I was painting and I was listening to Gabrielle Bernstein's new book. I can't remember what it was, but literally within the and I'll rewind here. I had been invited to go to a women's retreat where I would meet Gabby Bernstein in person. And I knew that it was because I was supposed to give her our book. And I was just really excited about that. And I'm listening to it, I'm painting, and in the very intro of her book, she dedicates it to her son who had died in the womb, like she had a miscarriage, and who always appeared to her as a blue butterfly. And I got goosebumps from my head to my toe, because I was like, oh my goodness, that's what Emberly appears to me as. I had never seen this particular butterfly in my life until after she died, and then it appeared in our backyard and our property all the time. So I knew that I had to include this blue butterfly. And then when I heard Gabby say that, it was just like head to toe confirmation, like, oh, I'm doing this the wrong color scheme. Like, I need to go blue and white and black, because this butterfly is amazing. Literally the front of the wings, when you're looking at it, is black with blue highlights and accents. It's the same one that you see on the cover of my book. But when its wings come up and you can see the underneath side, it looks like fire. It literally has black with orange spots. And I was like, what is this butterfly? Like, it was just like, oh, this is amazing. It's just such a beautiful sign. It's exactly who she is. So I knew that had to be on the book cover. And then once I changed it to the blue and the black and the white theme, it all came together. And I knew that Emberly had to be on the cover. And she just gave me so many things to confirm that and to lead me to the right person, that it all came together. And I just think it's just a magical cover. The whole experience has been so magical, and I'm just so grateful to share. So thank you for letting me share that story.
Well, I mean, I was really excited to hear more about that story, because I know for me, I was mentioning earlier how I had this terrible fear of something happening to my little one. And to the point that I was having this severe anxiety over it. And then when she was like 1.5, I think, I went to get a tattoo, and I just had this vision in my head of a blue butterfly. And now I have a blue butterfly on my tattoo. And it, just looking at it for some reason, like, brought me a lot of peace. So I'm wondering if there's just some like universal thing of a blue butterfly representing maybe children who passed on early, or bringing peace to us if we are worried about that?
I have this beautiful story where when I was preparing to go meet Gabby Bernstein, I knew that I had to bring her a book, and I knew that I had to bring a couple more of the copies because there was at least one more, if not two more people that I had to go meet and that I had to give the book to. And I didn't know why or where, but I follow those promptings when they come, and I just do them. So I had been invited to set up like a little thing with my art and my book at this little like vendors kind of thing after the retreat. And while I was there, I was setting up, and a woman was setting up next to me, and I knew that I was supposed to give her one of the books. I had heard her, she had been one of the speakers at the retreat, and something about it was just like, I don't know why, but I'm supposed to give her a book. And then also, there was a tarot card reader right next to us in a different table. And I was like, oh, that's fun. I want to go get my tarot read. So she picks it up, and she's flipping over these cards, and two of them had a blue butterfly in them. Like, what? I've never seen this deck before, but it was just like, okay, this is just crazy how much this is coming up. And then when I met the woman who I knew I was supposed to give the book to, she started crying her eyes out when I showed her the cover. And she said, "You've got to be kidding me. I got to show you this." She starts unzipping her shirt all the way down to the bottom, like the back of her back, where she had a tattoo of a blue butterfly. Like, so you're not the only one, Soda, who has apparently had this same symbol. And when you said it must be some kind of sign, I really think it is of people who are spiritually awakening or ready for rebirth. And that's one of the beautiful messages that Emberly gives me in our book, is like, we are all constantly transforming all the time. We're never just static beings. We like transforming, we like change, even though as humans we resist it. As souls, we love it. We love change, we love challenges, and we love to basically go through what she calls metamorphosis. And so many of us, we're in this caterpillar stage, we're perfectly fine, we're just living life, and then all of a sudden we're in a cocoon and we feel stuck, we feel gross, we want out. We're just like, I don't like this, I don't know what's happening, I'm all messy and ooey and gooey and whatever. And a lot of times when we're in that messy middle, we want to fix it, we want to change it, we want to get out, and or just pretend like we're not there. And as humans, sometimes she taught me that if we were to open a butterfly in that cocoon stage, we would actually kill it. We're doing it a huge disservice because it would never form the strength necessary to fly. Their wings would they have to learn how to push and push and push against, or maybe even lean into the pain, lean into the pressure, and grow that way. And then when you can, or when you get free from that, you can fly free. And that's what gives you the strength to fly. And so many of us as humans, we fear flying, we fear change, we fear the messy middle, we want to change it. But she said, embrace it, love it, and allow it to be without needing to fix it or heal it in any way, because it's creating something that's absolutely beautiful that you just can't see yet. So hold on, patience, hold on to that hope and that promise that flying, because I asked her, is flying really worth all that? Like, I don't want to fly if this is what I have to go through. And she's like, yes, it's worth it, Mom. It's worth it. And I can tell you now in hindsight, after I've written the book, that yes, it has been worth it. Even though I hate grief, I can't say I'm a fan. I also am so grateful for it, because I think it's kind of like a rubber band. The more you're stretched in different directions, the more capable you are of holding bigger and bigger things. Obviously, with a rubber band, it's a bad analogy because it can break or snap. But as humans, we just get stronger and stronger the more contrast we experience. And that's one of the main lessons that I learn over and over in the book, is through pain, we as souls actually experience more pleasure. And I also learned when she died that we can hold pain and pleasure at the same time, that we can have gratitude and grief at the same time. And it just makes us these ginormous beings. And I think that that's a good picture of what all that is really is. It's all encompassing. It encompasses the good, the bad, the ugly. And as souls, all of those things are neutral. They're not good or bad. We don't judge them as good or bad. We just judge them as they just are. And it's as humans that we judge them as bad and we want to resist them and not feel them. But as a soul, we really love the contrast. We really love the things that bring us to really low lows. And just like with a roller coaster ride, she gives this analogy in the book as well. A low low just gives you more and more momentum for when you're going high, and it makes your highs higher and makes it more fun to live. So I hope that I hope that's a good answer.
That message was perfect. And I know that I needed to hear a lot of what you just said, especially what you were saying about, is it worth it? Because sometimes we're not sure if it's worth it. I've had a few people tell me that they gave up on their book or their art or whatever it is because it was too painful. It reminded them of that person that they lost that maybe was their inspiration originally to create. And this actually leads me to the last question I wanted to ask you, which is, what would you tell someone who thinks that maybe it's not worth it for them to keep going in their creative journey, that maybe for other people it works to move on, but for them they're in a different situation. Their wound is too deep to ever find joy again. How can they rekindle that love for creating that they once had?
So many of us, when we get reminded of our loved one who passed, say that you're a painter and that just reminds you of your mom or whatever it might be, and now she's not here and you're just grieving, I want you to lean into that pain and paint with her, paint for her, allow her to be there with you in that experience rather than it be a bad thing that it reminds you of her. Have it be a good thing. Have it be something in your mind that says, this is what connects me with her and helps me remember her and helps me celebrate her life and the person that she was and what she meant to me. Like when I started art, I had never been an artist before either. And I had never even taken a painting class or any kind of art class or whatsoever. And then when Emberly died, I saw an ad to do geode art, and it called to me and I followed that calling because Emberly told me to. She said, follow the fun. You don't have to get anything done. And when you follow your bliss, when you focus on the things that light you up, that bring you the most joy, that's when you can actually connect with your loved ones and notice the signs. You can hear them more. You can feel them more because you're living in such a way that they want you to live. They don't want you to grieve forever. Sure, they're okay with, they like seeing you cry because they know that shows you that you loved them. And they want you to live a life of joy and of love and to know that they're okay and to feel peace. Because when you create from a place of just unconditional love and release the judgment, don't say that I have to create this to make it perfect or beautiful or to share it with anyone. Do it for you. Love yourself enough that you can heal from within by expressing what you're feeling. I would argue that many of the greatest songs of all time or the greatest art pieces of all time or things that we have created of all time have been created from lowest of lows, from the people who are experienced deep heartache and a break, and from people that have been rejected or people who have felt so much pain and loneliness and sorrow that they just had to express it, whether it's through color, whether it's through lyrics, whether it's through poetry, whether it's through the clothes that you wear. All of those things can act as such beautiful catalysts to your biggest inspiration. And you're not an exception to that. You can create something that is just as unique and beautiful and powerful as anyone else. There's no discrimination where it comes to divine inspiration and becoming one with all that is. Remembering your own power and sticking in your own lane and not trying to be like somebody else, but just creating from your heart and soul, especially when you are grieving, when you're feeling all of those awful feelings, will set you free and allow you to become unstuck and feel actually really grateful that you had those experiences, because now you have this beautiful pearl to show from your pain. And if you don't know anything about how pearls are created, It's when an oyster gets a piece of sand stuck inside of them and it hurts. It doesn't feel good. And they move and they move and they move so much that it creates a beautiful masterpiece. So Emberly likes to tell me that we are all masterpieces and works in progress at the same time. And that's how art is. That's how creation is. We are all perfect just the way we are. And we love to create and make better things all the time.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that, sharing your story, sharing your wisdom. I know that a lot of people needed to hear what you have to say. And thank you to everyone who tuned in this week. With May being Mental Health Awareness Month, I have been focusing on the mental health aspects of being successful as a creative entrepreneur, a professional artist, whatever your goal is. If there is a specific topic that you would like to be covered in this podcast, whether mental health related or something else related to being successful, feel free to message me on Instagram at The Success Palette or email me at thesuccesspalette@gmail.com. Thank you, and let's have a wonderful, successful week this week.